Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Noble, and today, guys, a special kind of video for you. I am here with Brant. For those of you who do not know, he queues Mercenary IO here on Starforge, and I believe queues on Satilshan sometimes as well. He is definitely known for his IO play, one of the better mercs here on the server, and so he's also taken some time to teach me the ins and outs of IO, and I am horrible at it. But Brant, welcome to the channel. I guess
Yeah, thanks.
my first question is, what made you choose IO merc? Because you know the usual meta is Arsenal because of the burst.
So, back in 3.0, I played Operative as my main, and I was not very good at it. And I got recruited into this guild called Natural Selection. I believe it was on Harbinger, but I could be wrong. And their GM was a mercenary, and he was amazing. And that was before we even had responsive safeguards. So that's when I made a merc. And I decided that I was going to gear up my merc and the old 208 set and start playing a bit. And then I took a really long break. So when I came back, I had my merc as my main, leveled it up to 70, and I found out that merc was meta. So I started playing Arsenal, and I was like, I'm decent at Arsenal, but I found that I was being capped out around 4 or 5k DPS on Arsenal in most solo ranked matches. So I knew that IO did more, so I swapped to IO, learned IO from a bunch of guides online because they're all really, really buried, and then figured out the ins and out of the rotation and all that, and then now I'm an IO main.
Nice. Like I said, I've mained Arsenal for years. I rarely played back when it was called Pyro. I played that every once in a while, but never, latched onto it quite like I did Arsenal. So this is your first season queuing ranked on Brant?
Well, yes and no. So I queued a bit back in 3.0, but not even enough to get rated. It was me just kind of messing around with the queues, and I was probably that really awful mat farmer that everyone hates right now. So yeah, I guess you could say this is my first season really queuing for ranking. But I honestly think it is not a good time to be queuing. Like, the problem is it's just so hard to climb. Like, for example, last night I was 1400 on my merc and I dropped to 1287. I mean, granted, I probably should have stopped queuing, but just because I kept queuing and queuing and queuing, it was just my team would do poorly. Like, I had one match where I did 6k DPS and 2k HPS, and we still lost.
Yeah, that's insane. Like I have no words. So could you explain a little bit? You just mentioned, the map farmers in queue, and before we get into this next little section, for those of you guys who know or don't know, there is a mission right now in SWTOR where you can get the Monumental Crystal by doing pretty much 50 solo ranked matches to get the points, or do some PvE mission. And so a lot of people who aren't PvPers elect to do the ranked PvP to get their crystal and farm mats. And I'm going to be the first person to say I love the fact that it makes more people queue for ranked warzones. However, the problem with that is you get a lot of people who really don't want to be in PvP, but they're doing it for the crystal or the mats or whatnot. So as someone like yourself, Brant, who queues for rating, can you kind of speak to how that affects the game's day to day? And clearly it affects how you climb, just from your previous example.
Well, I mean, when I get into a match and I have 2 or 3 people on my team who are pulling sub 3k DPS, it is really tough to climb, because as you go up in rating, the way that the rating system works is you will be put against people who are of the same rating. So I believe, and I'm not entirely sure, this could be false, but that each team's rating is the same. So say you have somebody who's 1700 and then you have somebody who's 1k, then you could have 2 people that are like 1400, because that's about the average. So obviously those teams aren't balanced, because you've got somebody who's got 1000 rating and 1700, so a really good player and probably not that good of a player, and then you have 2 silver players So
Yeah.
that it's not balanced at all. So they really do need to rework the way they do it. I think that the ranked, like the group ranked weekly that they have, so that you can get, I think it's just the regular crystal. I think that one's great because it doesn't affect anyone except your team. So say you guys go out and blow 50 matches, it doesn't affect anyone except you guys. I'm not losing rating because they're losing, um,
Yeah.
which I think is a great way to go about it. Encourage people to queue ranked, but they need to fix the way they do it with solos or fix the matchmaking so that good players can get better and worse players get lower, or that they just outright remove that mission.
Yeah, so I've said this here on the channel before. I consider myself to be a high bronze, low silver player. I think that's accurate. I'm definitely not a gold player and not a high silver player. I don't deserve any of those titles. But I've been trying to figure out what would be the best way for people or for Bioware to go about, making the matchmaking a bit better. And I wasn't able to come up with anything, conclusive, because do you want to make sure, the people who are doing well continue to do well, and the people who are not doing great to, continue to fall down in rating. I think what I found though is that just right now, in the current state of the game, the player base is just a little bit too small to kind of have, that kind of segregation in terms of rating, because now we're getting pops. Like I remember in 3.0, 4.0, and even back when arenas, started and when the season kicked in, like it didn't pop a lot, and you fought more of the same people, even more so than you do now. So as I said, previously, I really like that more people are queuing, but I am not happy with the quality of matches, and I think that's what gets a lot of people frustrated, is because I would not mind losing 3-round matches if I knew that those rounds were going to acid all the time, because the quality of players were so high. And I knew I lost because I got bested, not because we came into a match where there was a Sork in there who was, rating 227 and was in there for the mats. But I know that some people think that gear isn't a big deal. I personally think, I always will think gear plays a part in how you play the game. But bolster aside, I haven't found anything that would make it a little bit better for the people who play, seriously. Did you ever, brainstorm any ideas for what you think that they could fix to make
So
it
I have a
work?
couple. I think expertise was a good idea. I think that having a certain gear rating specific to PvP before you could queue was a really good idea. I believe that the 25 Valor is good in some aspects and bad in others, because if I make an alt merc, I only need to do a couple of unranked matches before I can get back into solos on that merc. But the other problem is somebody who's never played ranked only needs to do 5 to 10 matches to be able to get into ranked as well. So they kind of need to mediate that a little bit. I like to encourage everyone to join ranked, but at the same time, I'm all for people, getting to a certain skill level. The way bolster works is it brings you up to armor rating 252. So long as you are 230 rated with 228 augs, you are geared fine, in my opinion. But gearing is such a small part of the skill of a player, because I've seen people running absolutely atrocious stats, and they pull out great numbers. So the stats, I mean, yes, they will give you a little bit of an edge, don't get me wrong, but it's not the end of the world if you don't have them and you're a good player. So really focus on learning your rotation, learning your defensive cooldowns, all that before you queue ranked, and focus on the stats later.
Yeah, all great things. We have a lot of mercs who queue. People say merc is flavor of the month, and I think it always has been in a sense. I've had my merc since launch. I have the Deadly Contender title. That was back when 8v8 ranked was still a thing. So for those of you who are queuing merc on your respective server, what tips do you have for maybe the newer merc players, or some of the even some of the more experienced one who just, like want to get an edge. And I know a lot of people don't play IO in ranked, but I still think the tips from it are valid, just because certain skills like kiting and off healing transfer to character after character, because it just comes down to game sense. So what tips would you have for these Merc players?
Well, personally, like you said, kiting and off healing are the most important parts about being a Merc. You look at some of the best players on the server, highest rated. If you get in a match with them, chances are they're typically not pulling higher than 4K DPS in your average match, because they're off healing. In an all DPS match, having an off healer gives you a huge edge. That one is by far the most important as being a Merc, especially if you're not first focused. Playing that support and allowing your team to do the damage for you is extremely important, especially because Merc has arguably one of the best off heals in the game. It is like very important to actually use it. Kiting is another one. Using your abilities to, get out of certain situations, knowing when to run is all very important. Specifically for Mercs, popping hydraulic overrides is very important. I see a lot of people in queue pretty well throw it out the window because they don't know what it does. And being able to free yourself up from any roots or anything and to run and start healing yourself is so important. And that's why that's what makes a Merc go from taking, 200, 300,000 damage per round and dying to up to 400, 500, and even 600 some matches, is that kiting and being able to use the map to your advantage. Yeah. For example, like Mandalorian Battle Ring, that one is my favorite to kite as a Merc, because I can jet boost off the top floor down, have the team follow me, go up one of those boosters to get back to the top, and I can continuously go through that. So they can't hit me, and it allows my team to center out one guy and attack them. So even though I may not be off healing, I'm still distracting the team. So I think what a lot of people need to realize is that being good at PvP is not just pulling off big numbers. It's, pulling out your CCs, making sure that the healer is always locked down, or doing a combination of things. It's not just how much can I DPS.
Yeah, no, that's huge. I think that gets lost in the weeds, especially in matches that I've had where, sure, people aren't doing a lot of damage, but they're also dying right away. Like I have a Sentinel and Marauder that are both in bronze, and a majority of the matches I'm usually either the first or the top or second, highest in numbers. But then there are some games that I'm all the way down last, and that's because, I'm popping my predation, and I'm kiting, and I'm cloaking, and I'm trying to go heal to full. And what it comes down to, at least in my opinion, is like ranked, especially when you're doing all DPS. Like it's a DPS race, and it's surviving. Because once that first initial player goes down, it immediately changes the tone of the match. Is not just from the standpoint of a 3v4, but just like mentally, people are thinking, okay, we've lost a guy, or say you're on the team who got the first kill. Like, all right, guys, we got the first kill. Let's bring it home. Like it's such a huge shift. So like I said, for those of you who are looking for those tips and are trying to climb a little bit and just get a little bit better, you should think about that. Think about like surviving longer. That's managing your cooldowns better. But before we wrap up here, I just want to ask you one more question in a relation to encouraging people to queue ranked and making this community, the ranked community, a little bit better. So we obviously say don't queue if you aren't into PvP. That should be a given. But for those people who are trying to improve, I've seen a lot of people who say, how am I supposed to get better if I don't queue ranked? And my answer to that is like, people say, oh, just go queue regs, and that's fine. I'm not a huge fan of that. I do know there's someone on this server and in your guild who does that a lot.
Yeah.
But what
I think I say that a lot too, to be
yeah,
honest.
sometimes, but what would you say though? So like, say if you're trying to queue, and get better for ranked, like you can only learn so much in regs because you're not getting focused that much
Right.
because there's 8 people. So like, what would you say in the next, like, give me like a 60-second summary of like what people could do to improve now, as opposed to just queuing, regs after regs because you can only get so far.
Well, there's a few things you can do. First part is how I got good at doing tons of damage was parsing on a dummy. So downloading a program called Star Parse and working on your rotation on the dummy is really important. Although it is mainly something people do for PvE, I find it's very transferable to PvE because it taught me what all my abilities do. So that one is for raw DPS output, not worrying about kiting, none of that. That's just good DPS practice. Now, on the other side, I would try to get into a PvP guild, a larger one, and see if they will run challenges. So challenges are just like ranked, but there's no rating involved, and it's only with the 2 groups. So say you get 8 people together, you get your tanks, your healers, all that, and then you queue up for your challenges. No rating is removed, but you get that same practice you would in solos, and it teaches you how to how to coordinate with your team, how to make plans, because there's so much more that goes into damage taken and damage done. There's so much more in terms of strategies and such.
All right, guys, you heard it from the man himself. Constantly a thorn in my side in our bracket. I have fought him more than I've been with him. So, Brant, thank you again for coming on and sharing your tips and your knowledge and being a part of this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. So, guys, we're going to wrap up here. Thank you all for watching and listening. You all obviously know where you can find me. Brant does not have a channel of his own yet. Maybe he will, maybe he won't, I don't know. But if you have any Merc questions down below, put them down in the comments, and then I'll try to get him a link, and maybe he can come in and respond to some things if he has the time, because I am not the Merc expert, at least not in IO, but I've seen IO firsthand and what it can do, so I definitely would recommend, you check out the spec, and if I get into some matches where he's on my team, I'll try to, center the camera so you guys can see what he does a little bit. But thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next one.